Assalamu alaikum. As you know, we are discussing learning concepts, tools related to software project management. In this regard, we are discussing planning, and under planning, we have discussed a few topics in the previous two sessions. Today we are going to carry on with the concepts, definition, details, explanation regarding planning. Let me have a quick review or reference what we have covered during the last couple of sessions. Initially, we started with project planning. We did talk about what should be the objective, planning objective, definition of a planning with reference to software project management. Then we also discussed some key steps which, as a project manager, any software project manager should take care of. And then we also talked about some process groups involved in executing or managing a software project. Then we discussed software development plan, the core of the entire project management activity, SDP. Under that, we covered inputs for the software development plans, outputs being generated from the software development plans. Then we did talk about some tools and techniques for the execution of software development plans. And lastly, we talked about what should be the output of as a result of executing the software development plans. So those were the things which we discussed earlier, and then today we are going to talk about another important feature related to software development plan, that is elements of SDP. In fact, all these things are concepts, tools or procedures, guidelines, or anything we discussed during this course. These are outcome of the learning, history, and reporting submitted by various successful or the failed project managers. We have referred to various course books. Then we also given two addresses, and PMI, Project Management Institute course book, is also referred into that. The basic concept of referring these things during this course is that as a project manager, you should have a clear idea about the various possible options or the factors or the critically important activities which you must consider while you take the responsibility of managing a software project. You must also have an understanding. During this course, we are talking about a serious value-added software project. We are not talking about the small assignments which are done, which you have been done, I'm sure, during your course. And as a software professional, you must be advising so many people or individuals. But the course and the topics which we are discussing under this software project management relates to a long-term, complex, serious projects. And naturally, if the project is complex, if the project is of longer duration, if there are so many stakeholders involved in their stakes are involved in this project, then it becomes your responsibility to consider each and every aspect related to the successful project implementation. So you must consider in your mind there could be a possibility that some of the things which we have discussed during these sessions may not be applicable to the kind of project you already got in hand, or you have been referred to, or you are familiar with. But remember, software projects are always complex in nature. In fact, software project management is a challenging task as compared to any other physical-oriented mega project completions. So you have to consider all these aspects, and that's why you might be listening that some of the concepts are being repeated again and again. Why it is so? It is because the different angle aspect related to certain factors, activity, or as a project manager, making you the conscious about that activity is being referred to. So repetition doesn't mean that it is just a redundancy in the program. The repetition of the concept, definitions, or other related topics are equally important when we discuss or refer those things with reference to a particular topic or the module. So, lastly, when we were discussing, there could be a possibility that in future sessions, reference is going to be made for the previous discussion. So, if this is the situation, then we are not going to go into the details. We will simply will refer to the previous topic or the discussions. So then it becomes really important for you that you must go through all the notes, all those reference sites must be visited by you, and more importantly, having learned the basic tools and techniques, you must think about a particular situation, how you are going to react, how you are going to manage the project activity. So project management is not a reading-oriented course. It's a challenging task, should be tackled with reference to the situation you are facing with. So with these comments, now let's move forward to another important aspect of software development plan. Remember, we are talking about the planning aspect. So if you have a good plan, then execution will ensure you the successful completion of the project. If you have a bad plan, you might run into trouble at early stage, or it could be a cost overrun, it could be a time overrun, or the worst scenario you can think about, you might end up with a chaos situation. Planning, as we mentioned many times, it's a core, it's a critical aspect of the software project management. You must be aware of all the possible aspects which can be referred to the planning. So let's talk about some few important elements of software development plans. These elements will help you to develop a good software development plan. Or if you have been asked to review and comment on any predefined software development plan, still all these definition, concepts, or knowledge you are going to learn through these sessions will help you to critically evaluate the existing plan. As a project manager, it becomes your professional responsibility. Anything which has been brought to your knowledge for the critical review, you must give a technically sound input to that review or the comment. A few words before we talk about the elements of SDP. The first point is, project plan is iteratively defined through concepts and requirement phase. आपको याद होगा शुरू में जब हमने project initiations की बात की थी, requirement analysis की बात की थी, तो वहाँ पे हमने different models भी डिस्कस किए थे. And one important aspect was कि आपका user requirement जो है वो आपको कैसे पता चलेगी, और साथ ही यूजर रिक्वायरमेंट का ताल्लुक था कि ये जो भी एक्टिविटी, जो प्रोजेक्ट है, जो असाइनमेंट है, इसका बेसिक कंसेप्ट्स क्या है. सो गेटिंग द फीडबैक, नोइंग अबाउट द यूजर रिक्वायरमेंट, इस फेज में वेरियस एक्टिविटीज आर डन, एक्सरसाइज आर डन अगेन एंड अगेन. तो एक चीज ध्यान में रखें कि व्हेन वी टॉक अबाउट द प्रोजेक्ट प्लान इज नॉट डिफाइंड और प्रिपेयर्ड इन वन टाइम एक्सरसाइज. बैक एंड फोर्थ इसमें होगा, क्योंकि शुरू में अगर सिचुएशन ऑडिट रिपोर्ट आ गई, देयर कुड बी अ पॉसिबिलिटी दैट सम थिंग्स वर मिसिंग और सर्टन थिंग्स वर नॉट अंडरस्टूड क्लियरली बाय either by the team that was responsible to conduct that survey or feasibility, or the stakeholders, the users might have not clearly understood that. और आपको याद होगा हमने ये भी डिस्कस किया था कि एज ए प्रोजेक्ट मैनेजर जब आप यूजर रिक्वायरमेंट को रिव्यू करते हैं, स्पोकन, अनस्पोकन, ऑल काइंड ऑफ एक्सपेक्टेशंस, रिक्वायरमेंट मस्ट बी इनकॉर्पोरेटेड. ये आपका काम है एज ए प्रोजेक्ट मैनेजर, इंश्योर कराएं कि ऑल द थिंग्स हैव बीन कवर्ड. तो ये जो आइटरेटिव प्रोसेस की जो हमने बात की है, प्रोजेक्ट प्लान इज कंप्लीटेड हैविंग एन आइटरेटिव एक्टिविटीज, गोइंग बैक टू द स्टेक होल्डर्स, एंड देन यू फाइनली कम अप विद द प्रोजेक्ट प्लान. तो प्रोजेक्ट प्लान में चांसेस हैं कि आपको सिमिलर काइंड ऑफ एक्टिविटी बार बार करनी पड़ेंगी, सो दैट यू गेट योर कंसेप्ट क्लियर, यू अंडरस्टैंड द कंसेप्ट एंड ऑल स्कोप्स वेरी क्लियरली. और रिक्वायरमेंट जो है, यूजर रिक्वायरमेंट, दोज आर क्लियरली इलेबोरेटेड एंड एक्सप्लेन्ड. सेकेंडली, इनिशियल एस्टिमेट्स आर रिफाइंड एज स्कोप एंड रिक्वायरमेंट्स बिकम क्लियर. जो इसका रिजल्ट है, उसका शुरू में जो हम डिस्कशन करते हैं, हैविंग आइटरेटिव एक्टिविटी और प्रोसेस टू क्लियर द स्कोप एंड अंडरस्टैंडिंग द रिक्वायरमेंट, उसका एक रिजल्ट है, एंड दैट इज all these estimates are converted into a scope. Okay, this is the scope of the project or the activity for which this assignment has been taken care of. And secondly, the requirement, any ambiguity which relates to the requirement must be cleared, and the requirement must be open, transparent and well understood. All the gray areas needs to be removed. ये इसकी एक्सरसाइज जो है सॉफ्टवेयर डेवलपमेंट प्लान से पहले प्रोजेक्ट प्लान पे जब हम डिस्कस करते हैं, दैट नीड्स टू बी टेकन केयर ऑफ एज ए प्रोजेक्ट मैनेजर. इनिशियली प्रोजेक्ट प्लान की जो एक्टिविटीज या फेसेस को आप कह लें, दीज आर टू काइंड ऑफ फेसेस. वन इज द प्रीलिम और प्रिलिमिनरी फेज, second is the final. After going through the preliminary phases, and then as we talk about having iterative exercises, getting feedback, refining all these things, then you come up with the final project plan. How you arrived at a final project plan, which should become a part of software development plan, a document which as a project manager you will take to execute the activities and deliver the required goods and services. तो वो हम बात कर लेते हैं कि वो इम्पॉर्टेंट एलिमेंट्स सॉफ्टवेयर डेवलपमेंट प्लान की विच हेल्प्स टू क्रिएट और प्रिपेयर अ प्रोजेक्ट प्लान वो क्या. देयर आर 8 वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट एलिमेंट्स विच आर नेसेसरी टू प्रिपेयर अ सॉफ्टवेयर डेवलपमेंट प्लान. द फर्स्ट इज स्कोप प्लानिंग, देन ऑब्जेक्टिव, व्हाट आर द बिजनेस रिक्वायरमेंट ऑफ दैट project or other assignment, then the general approach in technical terms that needs to be considered. Contractual aspects are required to be taken care of carefully. Schedules are very important because these directly affects your cost and the time overrun. Resource allocation, we have discussed that many times and still we are again repeating. Your HDP must have clearly allocation strategy and policy. Evaluation methods are very important. If we say that software product is going to be created with respect to the qualitative standards, then it is equally important to determine first that what should be the evaluation methods to just check the performance of the product, service or facility which is going to be created as a result of this project assignment. And lastly, overview of the project management as a whole. In fact, if the project is of bigger size and various stakeholders are involved and users level, then it becomes really hard and difficult to define the scope. The user might ask a lot of things which may not be the part of overall agreement or the overall agreed terms and conditions. The stakeholders are always trying to get maximum out of the money invested in that software development project activity. As a developer, the software development team, they want to be restricted, limited with the requirement or the predefined or agreed specifications. At an early stage, when things are open, when user requirements are being worked out, then in order to determine the scope, it's a challenging task and it requires a lot of technical, professional and experience skill of the project managers to convince the stakeholders, to get the agreement from the users, and also make the software team ready to take care of the scope and all these things. In fact, scopes directly affect the specification, requirement, output, attribute. So that activity needs to be carefully worked out. Any change might result into the time and cost overrun. In most of the cases, things are going to be covered while keeping the budget at the same level. Then it affects the other activities. So scope planning is very, very important and needs to be carefully checked. Scope planning is the process of progressive elaborating and documenting the project work. As I said earlier, if the project is complex in nature and the users are of various skills and requirements, that needs to be checked one by one, step by step, so that the user requirements are met as the project progress, as the module developed, as various inputs out and other attributes are taken care of. And more importantly, the documentations. It's the scope which needs to be clearly spelled out. It is the scope planning which will tell that what will be the outcome of that project activity, what will be the deliverables, their attributes qualitatively and quantitatively. These are defined when you are defining a scope of a project. Then there are certain things which cannot be quantified. These relate to the qualitative aspect of the product that might need to be referred and defined in the project scope. Secondly, project scope planning starts with the initial input of product descriptions. What the user want, what you have been asked to prepare, that is the product descriptions. Specification of the service, product or facilities are going to be discussed and finalized. What is the overall project charter in terms of cost benefit analysis, in terms of value addition, in terms of adaptability, acceptability of these things. And if you recall, under software engineering, we did talk about some technical aspect of the product also. So that is part of the project scope planning. The moment we talk about what is going to be produced, then that planning starts, scope planning starts. Scope needs to be clearly defined. And in some cases, the initial definition of constraints and assumptions are worked out on that. All those things, limitation or assumptions, which are not realistic, which cannot be managed, those needs to be taken care of at this stage when we talk about the scope planning. You must also note that the product description incorporates product requirement and vice versa. Your product specification of the product should meet the requirement, and other way around is that product description should incorporate all the user requirement that reflect agreed upon customer need at one side, and the product design that meets the product requirement. That has to be taken care of by the development teams. Under scope planning, you should also consider and learn that the output of scope planning are the scope statement and scope management plan with the supporting detail. First, the statement, black and white, and then how this scope is going to be managed or met, it's a scope management plan, and all the necessary details are part of that. The scope statement forms the basis for an agreement between project and the project customer by identifying both the project objectives and the project deliverables. The project objectives, we had a discussion about this earlier, and the deliverables, those should not contradict, there should not be a gap between these. At the end of project completion stage, the deliverable should be as per conceived, agreed by the users. And the overall objective which any organization would like to achieve after spending time, money and effort should also be considered, and deliverable and objectives, as a project manager, you must focus on these things. And these two things needs to be clearly worked out, understood and written at a scope planning stage. As a matter of fact, in the mega project, it becomes practically difficult to come up with a firm statement about the scope and other things. So, most of the developers, they come up with a multiple scope statement, and that are appropriate for the level of project work decomposition. These multiple scope statements are then agreed upon with, and the final version of the scope statement is extracted. After clearly defining the scope and understanding what is the project scope and the charter, next important step is the objective, and that is from business perspective. What are the business requirements? It could be the mission statement. Any organization, stakeholder, vendor, or the customer who has asked for this particular facility or service, how it is related to the mission statement of that organization. You as a project manager, as a developer, must understand that. It should also define business objectives for project. One is the technical aspect, second is the managerial aspect, and third, equally important, is the business objective. Why this project has been taken up by your organization? Why the customer is asking this activity, this particular facility? Your organization demands that business objective of the project must be clearly understood and defined by the project team. And in fact, that business requirement sometimes also includes business cases. The example is net present value models and detailed description of the assumption. These things needs to be clearly checked and understood at this stage. Third important element of software development plan is the technical approach. Description of how new system is going to be developed. This is the time, this is the stage you must think about that. Either you have no option just to implement the project with the given resources, or you might be asked to come up with the appropriate plan. And that is use of technologies. You might be asked to look for the most competent, suitable, viable technology to be adopted for this software project. Remember, we are talking about the software project product, which should meet not only the current requirement, but also the future expected requirements. Proper selection of the technology is critically important. It not only affects the cost, it also affects the efficiency. And acceptance, portability, we have talked about these things in the previous sessions. That relates to the technology. Which technology is going to be opted to work on this project we are taking as assignment. Another important aspect is, should the job partially or totally be done in-house with the in-house facilities, or the consulting firm or the individual should be hired on that. Again, you as a project manager has to come up with the proposal considering all the aspects. Then you have to convince your sponsors that should it be developed inside partially or wholly, or some consultant should be hired. And what kind of consultant, at what cost those should be hired is another aspect which should be incorporated in the software development plan as it from the technical approach point of view. Then is the derivatives of the existing means, use of existing object module, reuse of the already software products prepared or available to you as a tool. That needs to be worked out. And architecture layout, the layers, you are familiar with this concept under software engineering. I am referring with reference to the software engineering models. What should be the layers of that particular project activity or the product we are talking about? So these things needs to be incorporated in the software development plan from technical point of view. Another important aspect of any software development plan is, after defining the scope, clearly understanding objectives and other things, now comes the point, what are the contractual aspects with reference to completing this assignment. It specifies general needs from outside sources. Number one, consultant. Do you need some consultant to work on this project? Do you need to consult the software suppliers? Software suppliers in terms of they should provide you the application softwares, or they develop software for you, whatever the case may be. Hardware suppliers. You as a project manager should put in your plan what are the technologies, what is the hardware, where, what model, when, where, by whom these hardware facilities are going to be provided. Network infrastructures and the related supplies are critically important for all the network-based, shared-based, web-based applications. These things need some time. These things require some specification to make it compatible with the existing. And if you are going to develop a software project for an ongoing large organization where manual system is also in place, and then they are going to transform into an automated system, this particular aspect needs to be very carefully worked out. Then, after taking care of these inputs, we have to consider another aspect also. What is the type of contract under which this particular software project activity is going to be completed? Normally, we have two kinds of contracts: cost plus and other fixed price contracts. Most other relationships are some kind of combination of these two. It depends upon the complexity, users, developer, customer relationships, and the project requirements. But generally speaking, these two kind of project contracts are signed for software development activity. A very quick overview of these two kind of contracts. Detail we will discuss in the following sessions. Cost plus, which is also called the time and material. This is one kind of contract. Cost plus is a contractual relationship where the developer is paid for the cost of the service provided and in addition is allowed an agreed profit margin. This is rather like renting a car. The customer pays for the time that the car is used by hour, day or week or month, whatever the arrangement, and for any other expense such as insurance, petrol, etc. It's a user responsibility that needs to be added to the cost. That's one example, cost plus. Other kind of contract is fixed price. A fixed price contract is a commitment by the developer to provide an agreed product or service for an agreed fee within an agreed schedule. This is similar to purchasing a bus ticket, for example. When the bus company agrees to take the customer to a specific destination within a published timetable and for an agreed fee. So you get a ticket, then it is the responsibility of the service provider to take you to that destination with that specified time. You don't need to pay extra. So the further detail we'll discuss when we'll talk about the organizations, another important aspect of software project management. Now we move to another element, that is the schedules. Technicalities, cost, management, all these things needs to adhere with the timetable, certain kind of timetable. In software development plan, you have to consider three things. Number one, the schedule defines specific dates for milestones, components, tasks, whatever the details your project got it. There should be a work breakdown structure. And lastly, you should use a scheduling engine like Microsoft Project and any other application program to prepare the schedule and then to check whether the activities are being done as per schedule. Next important element is resource allocation. As a project manager, in order to implement or execute the project activity, you have already defined what resources you need. लेकिन जब सॉफ्टवेयर डेवलपमेंट प्लान पे को आप वर्कआउट कर रहे हैं, यहाँ अब आपको ये डिफाइन करना होगा कि ऑल दिस रिसोर्सेज, जिसमें हार्डवेयर शामिल है, सॉफ्टवेयर शामिल है, और जहाँ कहीं ज़रूरत हो उसकी लाइसेंसिंग, क्योंकि पायरेसी इज नॉट अलाउड, लाइसेंसिंग रिक्वायरमेंट को आप वर्कआउट करेंगे. The versions of different software or some intermediate use of some intermediate inputs or the products, ये वो तमाम चीज़ें जो आपको इस प्रोजेक्ट को कंप्लीट करने के लिए ज़रूरी हैं. पहले तो उनकी एक्सेस करें, then you make a distribution plan. When, to whom these resources are going to be made available. Secondly, the personnels. Technical team members, leaders, supervisors, support staff, किस कैलिबर के, कितनी ड्यूरेशन के लिए और कब ये चाहिए. देखिए, सॉफ्टवेयर डेवलपमेंट प्रोजेक्ट की एक्टिविटीज के डिफरेंट फेजेस हैं, यू नो दैट. नॉट एवरीबॉडी इज रिक्वायर्ड ड्यूरिंग ऑल द फेजेस एक्सेप्ट यू. You are the project manager. You start from the beginning and you have to complete the project activity. Then there could be some other peoples who can be carried along with the project activities. But in most of the cases, the personnels, they are required with respect to their requirement and with respect to the phase requirement. तो वहाँ पे जब इन पर्सनल्स की रिक्वायरमेंट होगी, तो ये जो आपका रिसोर्स एलोकेशन प्लान है सॉफ्टवेयर डेवलपमेंट प्लान में, how you are going to allocate the resources means how many people are required when. तो उसके मुताबिक आपको अपने प्लान में जो है डिफाइन करना होगा. और इन फैक्ट क्योंकि सॉफ्टवेयर डेवलपमेंट प्रोजेक्ट्स में ह्यूमन फैक्टर इज क्रिटिकली इंपॉर्टेंट, नॉट ओनली फ्रॉम वर्किंग पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू बट आल्सो फ्रॉम फाइनेंशियल पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू. जो आपके ओवरऑल प्रोजेक्ट कॉस्ट है दैट डिपेंड्स अपॉन द यूज ऑफ पर्सनल. एज ए स्मार्ट एक्सपीरियंस प्रोजेक्ट मैनेजर, जितना एफिशिएंटली आप इनकी वर्क शेड्यूलिंग को जो है ना तैयार कर सकेंगे विद द एप्रोप्रिएट टाइम, वो आप उसकी कास्ट को जो है ना मैनेज कर सकेंगे. देयर शुड नॉट बी अ सिचुएशन where one of the critically important expense resource person is waiting for something being developed by another team or the group. अब आपने अगर उनको engage कर लिया है, call कर लिया है, but the product is not ready, which is going to use as input by that individual or the team, so it's a wastage of resources, human resource. Or in fact, the technical important, the experts, they are very expensive. तो आपके scheduling जो है resource allocation की, other than hardware, manpower, human resource की ज़रूरत है. One more important point I would like to emphasize now here. When you have a senior professional, जब आपने इसके टाइम विंडो टाइम फ्रेम जो है ना allocate कर दिया, it is absolutely mandatory for you to check कि उसको support staff उस critical important software team और individual के लिए क्या चाहिए. And you must make available the support staff for that expensive technical resource person. Not only the living body, but make sure जो support staff उस टीम के लिए या इंडिविजुअल के लिए engage किया गया है, that support staff is professionally sufficiently trained to support that. तो ये वो important factor है जो आपको सॉफ्टवेयर डेवलपमेंट प्लान में पहले इनकॉर्पोरेट करें और जब आप एग्जीक्यूट करें तो इसको कीप एन आई ऑन दैट. The human factor. Critically important people should be called when they are required. And when they are called, all the necessary prerequisites must be made available. तो resource allocation में personnel arrangement के point of view से आपको इसको check करना है. Nevertheless, इस स्टेज पे जब हम बात कर रहे हैं resource allocation की for developing a software development plan, these are initial estimates. There could be a possibility कि जो आपने estimate बनाए थे, जो planning की थी, at a later stage, it might require some revisions. Never mind. But make sure that you have already listed down all the prerequisites and necessary requirements और उनके allocation proper कर दी है. उसके बाद एक और important aspect आता है evaluation methods. Whatever product you produce, that not only should meet the user requirement, but also it should be treated as a qualitative product. अब इसको ये ट्रीट करना है कि whether it's a qualitative product, it meets the standard or not, उसके लिए ज़रूरी है there should be some yardstick, some testing parameters, those needs to be checked. अब डिपेंड करेगा जब आप एक सॉफ्टवेयर डेवलपमेंट प्लान तैयार कर रहे हैं उसमें आपको ये बताना होगा कि what methods you are going to use to validate the performance, efficiency and acceptability and relationship with the specification of that product is. पहले तो आपको ये देखना है कि टेस्टिंग फॉर एडहेरेंस टू द स्पेसिफिकेशन ये इसमें है या नहीं. अब ये चेक करने के लिए कि इट एडहियर्स टू द स्पेसिफिकेशन कौन सा टूल यूज करना है, यू विल बी हैविंग डिफरेंट ऑप्शंस. यू हैव टू फाइनलाइज कि विच टूल यू आर गोइंग टू यूज. सेकेंडली, ड्यूरिंग प्रोजेक्ट एग्जीक्यूशन व्हेन डिफरेंट मॉड्यूल्स, प्रोडक्ट्स, आउटपुट्स, डिलीवरेबल दीज आर बीइंग प्रोड्यूस्ड, आपके एक ओवरऑल परफॉर्मेंस एफिशिएंसी भी चाहिए कि आपने जितने भी रिसोर्सेज इम्प्लाई किए हैं, ऑल दीज रिसोर्सेज आर ऑप्टिमली एफिशिएंटली यूज्ड टू प्रिपेयर दिस प्रोडक्ट. इस चीज को भी चेक करने के लिए यू मस्ट हैव सम इवैल्यूएशन मेथड्स. वेदर यू वांट टू चेक द परफॉर्मेंस ऑफ द HR फैक्टर, ह्यूमन फैक्टर, और यू वांट टू चेक द परफॉर्मेंस ऑफ द हार्डवेयर यू हैव इंट्रोड्यूस्ड, तो उसका जो भी रिक्वायरमेंट, और यू वांट टू चेक द फैसिलिटी इन अ सर्टेन एनवायरनमेंट, standalone, web-based, net-based, shared, whatever the situation may be, उसके एक टेस्टिंग पैरामीटर्स जो है आपको डिफाइन करने होंगे. तो ये वो हैं जो आपके सॉफ्टवेयर डेवलपमेंट प्लान में आपको वो मेथड्स जो है डिफाइन करने या प्रपोज करने हैं. नॉट ओनली दिस एंड इक्वली इंपॉर्टेंट इज, ये तो अब हमने डिटरमिन कर लिया कि कम्प्लेक्स सॉफ्टवेयर प्रोजेक्ट इट गोज थ्रू अ साइकिल ऑफ वेरियस फेजेस, iterative procedures, methods. A lot of activity is being generated by so many people involved, or it could be a machine-oriented transactions, whatever the case may be. ये तमाम एक्टिविटीज जो प्रोजेक्ट डेवलपमेंट के स्टेज में जनरेट हो रही हैं, तमाम का लॉग होना चाहिए. अब उस लॉग को भी मेंटेन करना है टू अवॉइड द रिडंडेंसी एंड टू फिल द गैप. तो इन चीज़ों के लिए भी आपको एक इवैल्यूएशन मेथड फॉर द प्रिपरेशन और डेवलपमेंट ऑफ दैट प्रोजेक्ट एक्टिविटी वो आपको सॉफ्टवेयर डेवलपमेंट प्लान में इस पर्टिकुलर एलिमेंट के तहत जो है डिफाइन करना है. एंड लास्टली, जब आप रिव्यू करने के लिए आपने टूल डिफाइन कर लिया, टेक्निक्स भी डिफाइन हो गई, Someone has to review it. And these reviewers are generally the professional experts. They are not available when you need. You have to make them available when you need. इन दोनों चीज़ों का डिफरेंस है. So, your time schedule, resource allocation and your evaluation method, प्रोसीजर के साथ साथ जो रिव्यूअर्स हैं उनका स्केड्यूल भी सेटअप करना है, डिटरमिन करना है. आप इस सिचुएशन में ना आए, योर प्रोडक्ट इज रेडी बट यू कांट फर्दर डिलीवर इट बिकॉज इट्स टेक्निकल रिव्यू इज नॉट डन. रिमेंबर वी टॉक अबाउट FTR ड्यूरिंग द प्रोसेस, और डेवलपमेंट प्रोसेस में हमने फॉर्मल टेक्निकल रिव्यूज की बात की थी, और टुवर्ड द एंड ऑफ द प्रोजेक्ट जब वो डिलीवरी स्टेज पे अब उसके टेक्निकल रिव्यू की बात हो रही है, द रिव्यूअर उनका स्केड्यूल मस्ट बी क्लियरली मेड बाय यू अंडर दिस थिंग. लास्ट आइटम जो हम इस एलिमेंट ऑफ SDP में डिस्कस कर रहे हैं, दैट इज overview of the project management. This overview of project management is different from which we have discussed during the first couple of sessions. यहाँ पे जो हम project management एक technical project की हम बात कर रहे हैं, उसमें जो चीज़ हम डिस्कस कर रहे हैं वो ये है कि फर्स्ट स्टेप पे आपको क्या करना है, एज ए प्रोजेक्ट मैनेजर यू हैव टू डिफाइन वेयर पॉसिबल प्रॉब्लम्स कैन अकर. आपको याद होगा रिस्क एनालिसिस की हमने बात की थी. रिस्क एनालिसिस तो एक प्रोफेशनल एस्पेक्ट आ गया. एज ए प्रोजेक्ट मैनेजर पहले आप जो भी एक्टिविटी आपने, जो चैलेंज आपने एक्सेप्ट किया है, जस्ट डिफाइन व्हाट आर द पॉसिबल चांसेस वेयर यू माइट फेस सम प्रॉब्लम. Particularly if you are in a situation where you are going to decide whether new technologies are going to be introduced or not. Of course, you are not going to develop the project for the past. In technology projects, the past syndromes should be avoided. History should be used to improve the performances. Past experience should be referred to avoid the mistakes. But you can't duplicate what has been done previously. There's always a need that you must introduce the new technologies. But bringing in new technologies requires additional things, additional training, or different kind of skill set, and the user training orientation and overall infrastructure to be set up. There could be a technology which you feel that is most appropriate, most efficient. But you have to also consider what about the infrastructure support facility available where this product is going to be employed. तो इसको आपको यहाँ पे प्रोजेक्ट मैनेजमेंट को पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से डिफाइन करना है. देयर कुड बी पॉसिबल प्रॉब्लम. प्रॉब्लम की नौयत कितनी है, हाउ यू कैन टैकल एंड व्हाट स्टेप्स यू आर गोइंग टू टेक. Ultimately, the product which is going to be developed as a result of software project management activity, that must carry the value addition, that must improve the efficiency, that must ease out the users and increase their level of confidence about the service result data being produced. इन तमाम प्लस को देखते हुए उसके इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर सपोर्ट को आपको चेक करना है. सेकेंडली, द बिजनेस रिस्क. ऑलमोस्ट इन एवरी केस, एज ए मैटर ऑफ फैक्ट, when we talk about a big, complex, challenging software development project, there are assumptions, there are requirements for which we don't have any track record. At this stage, we don't know even the quantum of the risk or the kind of risk. Human factor is also involved. Regardless of the fact how good your product is, it is very important for you to make sure that this good product should be accepted by the users, should be appreciated by the stakeholder. And the transforming the old-fashioned, non-automated kind of process engineering being implemented in the organization, converted into using the modern technologies, and the biggest challenging task that you need to check that what are the business risks involved, including the response from the users. Resources. Whatever resources you have planned, you said these are critically important. But are you sure that all these resources will be made available to you timely and optimally, cost effectively? That you have to think and you have to plan. Second is, you have to define a contingency plan. Although we talk about that software projects are being done in a professional way, in a systematic way, before you start, you come up with the plans, you have all kinds of documentations, everything is being discussed. And as a matter of fact, software development projects are generally implemented by the highly skilled peoples who are not only trained and tuned to that project requirement, but they also carry a talent and experience to work on these project activities. which may not be case in other mega projects where general assignments, where there could be a possibility that different people can take the responsible supervisory jobs. Here you have a team of talented pools, but still things can go wrong. You must have a contingency plan, and particularly when you are talking about which methods you are going to use to develop this project activity. What if certain things goes wrong? Either the technological advancement which we have referred is not readily available, or is not it's not sufficiently suitable to that requirement, then you have to have some alternative. You must do that. From personnel point of view, whatever you have planned, what if the critically important experts are not available? What you have to do? And if you have done some outsourcing, that is another headache as a project manager, and that is you have to chase, follow, and has a close eye on that the outsourced firm should deliver the product or the service or the facility timely. So that needs to be checked. Contingency plan needs to be made available. Contingency plan में एक और चीज, you must consider if the worst thing happens, what to do. ये आपको प्रोजेक्ट मैनेजमेंट का जब ओवरऑल पूरी अप्रोच को आप रिव्यू कर रहे हैं तो रिस्क मैनेजमेंट फैक्टर, मिटिगेशन और कंटिजेंसी प्लान, इनको आपने केयरफुली रिव्यू करना है और इनकॉर्पोरेट करनी है. व्हाट इफ सिनेरियोज और वर्स्ट सिचुएशन टैकलिंग विद दैट. तो ये चीज़ें हैं जो आपको एज ए प्रोजेक्ट मैनेजर जब भी कोई सॉफ्टवेयर डेवलपमेंट प्लान आप रिव्यू करें या तैयार करें, जो हमने 8 एलिमेंट्स या फैक्टर अभी डिस्कस किए हैं, यू मस्ट कंसीडर टू इनकॉर्पोरेट दीज थिंग्स. जैसे पहले भी हमने डिस्कस किया है, डिपेंडिंग अपॉन द कॉम्प्लेक्सिटी ऑफ द प्रोजेक्ट, नंबर 1. सेकेंडली द नेचर ऑफ द प्रोजेक्ट एंड द स्कोप ऑफ द प्रोजेक्ट. हो सकता है कि जो हमने 8 फैक्टर डिस्कस किए हैं, कुछ फैक्टर ऐसे हों जिन पे एम्फेसिस ज़्यादा हो. द अदर एलिमेंट और फैक्टर मे नॉट बी एज इम्पॉर्टेंट एज दीज मे बी इम्पॉर्टेंट इन अदर प्रोजेक्ट. बट वट एवर द सिचुएशन में भी आपको एटलीस्ट एक चेक लिस्ट के जरिए ये इंश्योर कर लेना है कि यू हैवंट मिस्ड एनी ऑफ द फैक्टर विच वी हैव डिस्कस्ड सो फार. हियर वी कंक्लूड आवर डिस्कशन रिगार्डिंग सॉफ्टवेयर डेवलपमेंट प्लान. हमने प्लानिंग के तहत 2 इम्पॉर्टेंट टॉपिक जो है डिस्कस किए. पहले हमने डिस्कस किया था प्रोजेक्ट प्लानिंग, देन वी डिस्कस इन डिटेल द सॉफ्टवेयर डेवलपमेंट प्लान. अब हम आते हैं प्लानिंग के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से थर्ड इम्पॉर्टेंट फैक्टर की तरफ, एंड दैट इज ए लाइफ साइकिल प्लानिंग. वट एवर यू प्लान, यू हैव टू कंसीडर अ लाइफ साइकिल ऑफ ए प्रोजेक्ट. आपको याद होगा हमने शुरू में डिस्कस किया था कि कोई भी सॉफ्टवेयर डेवलपमेंट प्रोजेक्ट जो है, जब उसको कंसीव किया जाए, उसको एग्जीक्यूट करने की रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी ली जाए, दैट प्रोजेक्ट शुड बी कंप्लीटेड with reference to the required phases, and these phases constitute a life cycle. प्रोजेक्ट की नौयत को सामने रखते हुए, रिसोर्सेज के यूज को ध्यान में रखते हुए और ओवरऑल एग्जीक्यूशन स्ट्रेटेजी को मद्देनजर रखते हुए अब आपको डिसाइड करना है विच लाइफ साइकिल यू शुड यूज. हम बड़ा कॉमनली यूज करते रहे हैं वर्ड द SDLC, सॉफ्टवेयर डेवलपमेंट लाइफ साइकिल. नाउ इज द टाइम एज ए मैनेजर लेट्स टॉक अबाउट लाइफ साइकिल मैनेजमेंट. और मैनेजमेंट के साथ ही अब जिक्र होगा प्लानिंग का. प्लानिंग पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से हाउ यू हैव टू मैनेज, व्हाट यू हैव टू मैनेज. जो आप लाइफ साइकिल अडॉप्ट करें, रेकमेंड करें और उसको एज ए टूल यूज करें टू एग्जीक्यूट द प्रोजेक्ट. इफ यू हैवंट सेलेक्टेड द राइट कंपैटिबल लाइफ साइकिल to complete that project, you might run into trouble. If you don't choose any life cycle, that will be a very bad option. You could be quite confident, or you might have some pressure from the organization that we have a set team of professionals, we have been doing these kind of projects quite frequently, so there is no need to go and reinvent the wheel and waste time on these things. No, this is not the case. Remember, every software project activity might have something new in it, and the technical requirement and the users may be different from organization to organization, product to product. There could be a possibility that a certain kind of project or the product that was successfully developed for A organization. अब वही product, the similar kind of the project may not be completed with those kind of guidelines जो A organization के लिए थी. Reason is very simple. There could be a possibility the environment in which you are going to develop that kind of product or the facility, उस ऑर्गेनाइजेशन की जो environment है, जो infrastructure support है, जो user की expectation है, that will be certainly different from A organization. And secondly, हमने पहले भी discuss किया था from performance and efficiency point of view, if even you are going to develop a similar kind of facility or product with the same or similar kind of team, as a project manager, अब आपको वही product या facility lesser cost में, less time में, adding more features, उसके साथ आपको तैयार करना होगा. That product needs to be prepared. So, life cycle की option तो फिर आ गई. Even if you are going to generate a similar kind of the service or facility. So, considering that this is the same kind of project we have done before, there is no need to go into that technologically suitable life cycles will not be a good option for you. Normally जो life cycles में हम क्या चीज़ देखते हैं, important चीज़ें ये होती हैं. One is the phases. You have to categorize the entire development work into different phases. And not only you have to categorize all those activities into different phases, then you have to determine their orders. Which phase should be initiated when. तो ये एक लाइफ साइकिल का एक बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट इंटीग्रल एक हिस्सा है. In fact, when you are determining what are the phases and what is the order of phases to be implemented, in fact, you are talking about the life cycle strategy or methodology. Second is, अगर तो प्रोजेक्ट कॉम्प्लेक्स है, the possibilities are कि जो हमने जब हम वर्क ब्रेकडाउन स्ट्रक्चर में डिफाइन करते हैं चीजें, इनपुट फ्रॉम वन फेज और वन एक्टिविटी इज गोइंग टू आउटपुट फ्रॉम वन फेज और एक्टिविटी इज गोइंग टू बी यूज एज इनपुट टू द अदर फेज. अब ये भी आपको डिटरमिन करना है. अब इन ऑर्डर टू डिटरमिन व्हेन द इंटरमीडिएट और द फाइनल प्रोडक्ट और द सब प्रोडक्ट आर गोइंग टू बी प्रोड्यूस्ड एज अ रिजल्ट ऑफ सर्टेन एक्टिविटीज कैटेगराइज्ड इन अ पर्टिकुलर फेज, ये आपको एक प्लान वर्कआउट करना होगा. जब आप इनकी प्री रिक्वेजिट एंड अदर यूजेज को डिफाइन कर रहे हैं, टाइम स्केल के लिहाज से आप बात कर रहे हैं, डेवलपमेंट प्रोसेस के हिसाब से आप इसको प्लान कर रहे हैं, तो अगेन यू आर टॉकिंग अबाउट द लाइफ साइकिल अप्रोचेस. एंड लास्टली, रिव्यू यूज्ड इन ईच फेज. इट्स वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. ये तो हमें पता है बाय डेफिनेशन के one phase consists of different activities or similar kind of activities which are logically, technically related to that phase. But there must be one product of one phase. If we are having different phases, you will be having different outcomes or product of each phase. These product or outcome, these needs to be technically reviewed from the teams. तो लाइफ साइकिल का एक और इंटीग्रल पार्ट ये हो जाएगा कि जब आपने एक फेज की प्रोडक्ट को रिव्यू किया बिफोर पासिंग ऑन टू द अदर फेजेस और बिफोर डिक्लेयरिंग इट एज अ फाइनल प्रोडक्ट, वो आपको लाइफ साइकिल की अप्रोच को ध्यान में रखते करना होगा. सो दैट बिकम्स इम्पॉर्टेंट. इट्स वेरी ऑब्वियस दैट इन ऑर्डर टू कंप्लीट अ सॉफ्टवेयर प्रोजेक्ट प्रोफेशनली यू मस्ट ऑप्ट फॉर अ लाइफ साइकिल प्लानिंग. तो ये लाइफ साइकिल प्लान आपका क्या होगा, मॉडल क्या होगा, उसके ऊपर जो है ना हम डिस्कस कर लेते हैं. एक चीज तो बड़ी क्लियर है कि डिफरेंट प्रोजेक्ट्स रिक्वायर डिफरेंट अप्रोचेस. इवन इफ यू आर गोइंग टू क्रिएट अ सिमिलर काइंड ऑफ फैसिलिटी और द प्रोडक्ट, स्टिल देयर कुड बी अ पॉसिबिलिटी विद द करंट सिनेरियो एंड द सिचुएशन एंड द रिसोर्सेज अवेलेबल एंड द यूजर रिक्वायरमेंट, आप उसकी अप्रोच जो है ना डिफरेंट अडेप्ट करेंगे. ये डिफरेंस दैट कुड बी बिकॉज ऑफ यूजिंग न्यू टेक्नोलॉजी or because of addressing a new set of users or taking care of the new stakeholders' objectives. You do not need to know all models by name, but you must be clear about the approach you are going to adapt. You should also know how that if given a certain scenario, what sort of software development life cycle would be appropriate. ये आप इसको रिव्यू करेंगे, then you come up with a kind of recommendation. ये आपके एक पहले एक टेक्निकल इनपुट होगी. from life cycle planning point of view. And remember one thing, a life cycle is not a design, modeling or diagrammatic technique. These are the tools which you are going to use to complete that project, to have resources available, to keep them in check and make sure the final product is going to be delivered or produced as per the required specification. इसके साथ ही जो डिफरेंट टेक्निक्स हैं वो भी इसमें यूज़ की जा सकती हैं. आर यू यूज सिंगल लाइफ साइकिल मॉडल, आर यूज मल्टीपल और कम्बिनेशन ऑफ दैट. आप इस डायग्राम को अगर आप गौर से देखेंगे तो आपको 3 डिफरेंट लाइफ साइकिल्स के बारे में जो है ना कुछ डिस्क्रिप्शन यहाँ पे नजर आ रही है. दिस इज सेल्फ एक्सप्लेनेटरी. बिजनेस लाइफ साइकिल में पॉलिसी प्लानिंग है, नीड्स आइडेंटिफिकेशन है, प्रोजेक्ट कंसेप्ट है, रियलाइजेशन है, प्रोडक्ट एंड सर्विस है और उसके डिस्पोजल है. प्रोडक्ट लाइफ साइकिल में फिजिबिलिटी है, एक्विजिशन है, ऑपरेशन, डिस्पोजल है. और प्रोजेक्ट लाइफ साइकिल जो है उसमें कंसेप्ट है, डेवलपमेंट है, इम्प्लीमेंटेशन है, टर्मिनेशन है. इस कंसेप्ट को यू गो बैक एंड रेफर टू द क्लास नोट्स रिलेटेड टू दिस पर्टिकुलर टॉपिक. फर्दर डिटेल आपको यहाँ पे मिल जाएगी. देयर आर डिफरेंट काइंड ऑफ लाइफ साइकिल मॉडल्स, कोड एंड फिक्स मॉडल, वाटरफॉल, स्पाइरल, प्रोटोटाइपिंग, रेड मॉडल्स, ये हम पहले भी डिस्कस कर चुके हैं. आप इनको I don't want to go into the details, but I want you to refer and go back to the class notes about this program. लाइफ साइकिल मॉडल के ऊपर अभी हम डिस्कशन को जारी रखेंगे क्योंकि सिलेक्टिंग ए लाइफ साइकिल इज गोइंग टू मेक श्योर दैट हाउ सक्सेसफुली आर गोइंग टू इम्प्लीमेंट द प्रोजेक्ट. चूंकि आज के सेशन में ये टाइम ख़त्म हो गया है तो हम इसको लाइफ साइकिल की डेफिनेशन को हम और उसकी फर्दर जो रिक्वायरमेंट है और जो चीज़ें हैं नेक्स्ट सेशन में डिस्कस करेंगे. Very quickly, just a quick reference what we have done today. हमने प्रोजेक्ट प्लानिंग, सॉफ्टवेयर डेवलपमेंट प्लान, 2 इंपॉर्टेंट टॉपिक को डिस्कस किया. फिर अब हमने लाइफ साइकिल प्लानिंग में उसके की एट्रीब्यूट्स जो है ना वो डिस्कस किए हैं. ये 3 इंपॉर्टेंट एस्पेक्ट हैं जो आप किसी भी प्लानिंग पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से जब आप अपना ओवरऑल एग्जीक्यूशन प्लान डेवलप करते हैं तो दीज विल हेल्प यू टू प्रिपेयर एन इफेक्टिव, मैनेजेबल, एग्जीक्यूटेबल प्रोजेक्ट प्लान. प्लानिंग के सिलसिले में डिस्कशन जारी रहेगी. नेक्स्ट सेशन में हम इनके रिमेनिंग टॉपिक्स और फैक्टर्स को डिस्कस करेंगे. उस वक्त तक के लिए अब मैं इजाज़त चाहूँगा. अल्लाह हाफ़िज़.